So I'll call this meeting to order for July 6th, 2023, the regular council meeting. We do have Dan Short is excused from the meeting today. He's away. We have minutes. Oh, we need a motion. Thank you. I forget that. Lynette.
I'll make the motion to excuse Dan.
Thank you. Lynette, all in favor, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. We have minutes of the June 22nd, 2023 meeting. Does anybody see any changes that need to be made to that, or subsequently a motion to approve the minutes, adopt the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate. That's carried. Are there any post-agenda items? Anything post-agenda? Seeing none, we have an agenda printed and circulated. Kelly, motion to approve.
A motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Question period or notices of motion. Anything online, Catherine?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, thank you. Seeing none here, we'll move on. So we're at item number 7.1, bylaw 2058-23, land use amendment 005 Hamlet boundaries. Maria, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. The purpose of this bylaw is to redesignate 7 parcels that are now included within the expanded Hamlet boundaries. So now that the new MDP has been adopted, part of that was the expansion of the growth Hamlet boundaries where it made sense. So we need to update the land use bylaw to reflect those boundaries. This includes 5 parcels in Tilly, which would change from residential rural district to residential Hamlet district. In Rolling Hills, there's 1 business rural district parcel, that's the Tyrell building, that would then be redesignated to business Hamlet. And there's a parcel in Bow City that's owned by the county along the river. Right now, that parcel is split zone. So part of it is already special parks and public service. That's the section where the community hall is. And then the part that's nearest the river is zoned agriculture. So we are proposing to zone that entire parcel to special parks and public service. The land use amendment would achieve the implementation policy of 2.7E of the MDP. All 7 parcels would meet the requirements of their new land use district. It is recommended by staff that council provide first reading of bylaw 2058. And should that get passed, then this bylaw will be advertised and sent to adjacent landowners and affected parties for their ability to comment at the public hearing. Thanks.
Thank you, Maria. Are there any questions? Anyone have questions? Holly, please.
I was a little confused about the Tilly one, just in terms of location. I'm not sure which one this is looking at it. Was that the first one, the map? So these are all, is the south of that, is that already part of Tilly? Because it looked different in 2 different maps. I wasn't clear where the boundary was before and where it's going.
The former boundary, I guess, would be shown in yellow. So everything south of the hatched line is already in Tilly, so that's existing. The red line shows now what has been updated since the MDP was adopted. So these parcels are now included in the new Hamlet, I guess, the new boundaries. This red line, I guess, is the shared boundary here. So this parcel was already in Tilly, and all of these parcels already in Tilly.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Holly.
Was any of these parcels one that was kind of used as farm previously, Adina, or is that not? No? Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or a motion? We do have a recommendation. Kelly, please go ahead.
Yeah, so these boundaries are all still County of Newell. It just indicates the hamlet. And I see no problem with making these housekeeping adjustments. So I'm ready to make a motion as recommended to approve.
Okay, to approve first reading.
Mhm.
Any further questions? Holly, you've got a question?
So in the new MDP, all these boundary adjustments already suggested in there?
Go ahead, Marie, please.
The new hamlet boundaries were approved through the new MDP. So in discussions with the steering committee and with council when we did the MDP, we talked about growth hamlets and rural hamlets and also updating the boundaries for potential expansion and also where the use was already hamlet use. So these ones in Tilly, they're residential parcels that would make sense to become part of the hamlet. That Tyrell building in Rolling Hills was not included in the hamlet, but because of the business nature of that and the surrounding lands, it made sense to just adjust those boundaries.
Okay,
So in the MDP, the one that went out, these were the boundaries that were included. So, okay.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Go ahead, Lynette.
Can we just, how or do we communicate all of these changes? Like each neighboring landowner gets a letter, or how do we do that?
Go ahead, Maria, please.
So we, prior to first reading, we sent a notification out to all the landowners that are directly affected. So everyone in Tilly, the Tyrell building in Rolling Hills, and then it's the county parcel at Bow City. So they've already been notified directly as the first step, and which is kind of over and above what's required. So should council pass first reading, then again, we'll send that notification directly to the landowners, as well as the neighboring landowners. So any parcel that touches the boundaries of these affected parcels will be notified, and they'll have the ability to speak for or against at the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Holly?
So in regard specifically to the campground at Bow City, so Bow City community would not have been notified then because they didn't know about when I talked to them. So they, as a landlord, they aren't notified then? It's only a renter or what?
Go ahead.
The Bow City Community Hall Association would have been notified prior to first reading. They were sent a letter. Any adjacent landowners, so anyone in the existing site of Bow City, and only those lots that are directly adjacent will be notified once first reading is passed and the public hearing is set. So it very well could be that the adjacent landowners to that parcel in Bow City did not receive a direct notification at this point, but they will.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor to approve first reading. All in favor, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. That takes us to item 7.2, bylaw 2060-23, the schedule of fees, potentially 3 readings. Lane, welcome.
Good morning. So this bylaw is before council in relation to a couple of items, one of them primarily being the recently approved bylaw for the non-residential tax incentive. In that non-residential tax incentive bylaw, there was reference to fees that applicants would need to pay, and we're now needing to include those fees within the schedule of fees bylaw. So relatively minor amendment that's being requested in that regard. Also, while we're bringing this bylaw, the schedule of fees bylaw, forward for council to review, we are wanting to include one additional minor revision that would ensure that any charges for emergency services are linked directly to the rates that Alberta Transportation pays for the services provided when responses are on primary highways. So those are the extent of the changes. There is one correction that we want to bring to your attention before you grant first reading to the bylaw. You'll notice on page 10 of the schedule of fees, just before the last paragraph, we've included a charge of $7,000 an hour. It's meant to be $700 an hour on that one particular line. So that's a correction that needs to be noted.
Thank you, Lane. So noted. Are there any questions? Seeing none, are we ready to, I think this is basically, as you've indicated, in updating our fee schedule. Lynette, please.
I make the motion to give first reading to the fee schedule as amended.
Okay, bylaws 2060-23. Any further questions? All in favor of the motion, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. And we can go immediately to second reading on that. Is there a motion for second reading? Adina, please.
I'll make that motion for second reading.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate. That is carried. And as per procedure, we need to have consent to move to third reading today. So go ahead, Ollie, please.
I motion for consent for third reading.
Okay, motion to provide consent for third reading. All in favor, please indicate. That is carried. And a motion to proceed with third reading. Oh, Ellen, please.
Motion for third reading of bylaw 2060-23.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate. That is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Wayne. We do have Justin Thompson from the Southern Alberta Land Trust coming in at 11 o'clock, so we will go past item number 8 and 8.1 and move to 9, agriculture services business. Mr. Todd Green, welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How is everybody? Wonderful? Good.
Right.
All right, so start with the positive stuff, a little update on all the wonderful things we've been up to, if that's okay. Seeing some nodding, that's where we'll go. So the roadside mowing, everybody that lives north of the number 1 has probably seen some roads kind of mowed now. They should be, I think, at least we're hoping they'll be crossing the number 1 in the next couple weeks. I know they moved kind of into the Dutchess area. And I think even a little bit around the Rosemary area, they were parked there for a bit. So anyways, moving right along there. Starting to dry out a bit as we come south. So we're starting to plan to run a water truck. We primarily mow within the irrigated areas. We typically see a little more green grass in the irrigated areas. So we don't typically have to run a water truck in the first pass, but this is not a typical year either. Roadside spraying, same kind of progress. Talked a little bit with one of the operators last night as he was headed out, and it sounds like they're doing really good. Hoping by midweek next week they'll be having the bulk of it done, and it'll just be cleaning up areas they didn't have the right wind conditions for when they went by. So that's, I think, a good news story, because the weeds tend to in these sort of conditions, they don't really accept the herbicides as well. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the Hamlet maintenance is going to be slowing down quite a bit. Anybody that doesn't have irrigated areas in their hamlets is, that's going to really slow down our maintenance there. So we're trying to do all the extras because we really don't know when we're going to have to go back to some of the areas. So, we talked yesterday before the crew left. They were headed out to Patricia. We weren't 100% sure if we were even going to have to go back to Patricia before the rodeo weekend. So we tried to make sure we cleaned up as much as we could before. So anyways, just some of that stuff. But if you do notice anything, even if it's just the alfalfas and the weeds that are poking up, we need to do a little extra. Just let us know. We started our Riverwalk program yesterday, so that's 2 weeks ahead of schedule. In chatting a little bit with Donovan last night, he mentioned that some of the weeds are a little bit ahead of schedule down there, so we were lucky that we got onto that. Emerson Bridge, this is the time of year where it gets screaming busy, and we're so happy to have everybody enjoy the park down there. We understand maybe we even had Counselor down there last weekend, so was there more than one? Okay, well, I only heard about one. Was there 2, 3, 4? Both of you, sorry. Well, I'm glad that you were able to take part in the festivities. It sounds like it's gonna be a pretty busy weekend again this weekend, so. The tree planting and maintenance program with the EID, I think, is going really well. We're just getting into more of the maintenance side of it. So kind of in that late May, early June, the crew is out helping the EID do some planting, remulching, doing some little stuff. And now they're getting into what the EID and the PhD program has in terms of maintenance on all the old sites. So looking forward to how that works out. We did some contract work for CP, so took care of all their regulated weed species for them. That's a good program. There's a lot of weeds that have come in the past from from those tracks, just naturally through the way weeds spread, and we're happy to be able to continue that partnership with them. I believe I've talked briefly about this before, but we're going to be doing a weed survey for the federal government. So it's a contract weed survey. So they send us the protocols. In fact, we're doing a little training with them this afternoon, and then we kind of administer that for them. So there's only 15 fields, and they give us $100 per field to do it. So I'm hoping to make the money actually make sense. We got to do about 4 or 5 fields a day, but we'll see. It depends on how intense their protocols are. Might be 2 fields a day. Rural beautification, we don't have a lot of nominations. So if you know of some beautiful yards, I would recommend that we try to get them nominated. Otherwise, we probably won't be able to run that program this year. Sorry.
Thanks, Todd. Holly, you've got a question?
Yeah, just when's the closing date for the nominations?
Next Tuesday, July 11th, I believe that is. Yeah. So we do have a little bit of time, but yeah, not much.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Is that? Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly. Please.
So what if they have won in the past? What is the timeline that they need to take a break from?
There's nothing really in the policy, but it would be nice to give a couple of years, just so that other yards may have an opportunity to also be involved. But there's nothing in the policy.
Okay, thank you. Greg?
Mowing along the pathway, I see there's some pretty good kochia trees growing. Just wondering, because there's grass that hasn't taken because of no water. Is there anything we can do, or is it just kind of wait for some water?
Yeah, a few things. And I learned more about this yesterday, but that part of the contract is still under the control of our contractor. So they're responsible to make sure that the grass actually gets a start. I mean, obviously a horrible time to try to get grass to start. So we don't want to impact their works. And yeah, so we're playing by ear. We'll make sure it looks good going through the winter, but in terms of right now, we're going to let her sit.
Go ahead, Greg. Thanks.
Yeah, my concern more is, we have 55 plus games coming to the area, so it would be great to have it looking okay, but what do you do, right? So yeah, that's just my concern.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns, the way the contractor seeded that was with hydro seeding. So that seed is still sitting there under that hydro mulch, and we're just concerned that if we impact that seeding by doing the maintenance, then we might be on the hook for future. But when is the summer games?
Not till the, second week, third week in August.
Oh, so we have some time.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. We'll write that down. We'll make sure it looks pretty for all the wonderful people.
Okay, perfect.
All the extra wonderful people.
Additional.
The only other thing I wanted to mention, sorry, pardon me, the Foothills Forage and Grazing Association is hosting a managed grazing strategies for native grasslands, August 16th up in Gem. So hoping to get some people there for that. You guys remember we partnered with Foothills Forage Grazing Association. We sponsor some money in the hopes that they would bring some of these learning opportunities to us, and that's what they've been trying to do. So hopefully we can have some local producers, and the EID was in the invite already, but hopefully we can get more people involved and learning about those kinds of things.
Good point. Thanks, Todd. Holly, please.
Could I get a date again on that? I can give you a date.
Sorry, that was the Foothills one? August 16th.
The 16th. Okay. And then what would be the update on noxious or invasive weeds? What's happening on all the ones you deal with?
In general, I think we're doing pretty good. It's a little faster than normal. But I guess I haven't got a perfect update from Donovan on that. But I know they were taking care of some of the prohibited noxious weeds last week. Some of the sites that they were waiting for callbacks from producers. So there was a couple knapweed sites. They had worked with a producer along when they were doing the CP tracks. There was a producer that had some baby's breath, so they were working with him on that. But I think, out of the 500, I don't have a perfect update on that.
So go ahead, Holly, please.
Are you seeing, in general, is it fairly remain somewhat the same? Or are you finding large batches of knapweed or large batches of burdock or large batch, I forget that one that gets really, it's the knapweed that gets really tall and gets, I haven't seen it in person, but.
No, the knapweed is kind of a shorter plant, more problematic in pasture situations, but it does tend to like everywhere. But no, I think in general, we have a very clean municipality for regulated weed species. Certain species kind of thrive in drought conditions because the other or normal crops or normal pastures kind of dwindle and invasive species tend to thrive. That's why they're more invasive. But I think in general, we're doing pretty good. Some of the big tap-rooted plants, they're certainly still needing to be controlled. But yeah, no, in general, I don't think we've had anything explode in nature where it's gotten way worse than previous. But
Okay, thank you. Lynette, please.
Do we have to register for the grazing school?
yes, through Foothills Forage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that report, Todd. Appreciate your attention to the details. We'll move to item 9.2, potential declaration of an agriculture disaster, which is, we know it's dry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and my apologies. I don't exactly know how to label these things in the subject line when we talk about it. So we've seen some of our neighbors and some kind of, well, maybe not even exactly close neighbors, but people really starting to talk about the declarations of ag disaster. You know, Vulcan County has done it. Foothills has done it. Stettler and Paint Earth have now declared, or they've also declared. So it's, you know, we're starting to see these things come up. So I wanted to bring it forward. In 2021, we made a declaration of agricultural disaster in August. So we do still have a fair amount of growing season left, but I don't know that a significant rain would even turn around some of our areas that are the most impacted. So I thought it was just a good time, and I'm hoping Matt agreed, just a good time to bring up the conversation, start talking about it, and if there was the appetite to make that declaration, we certainly could, or we could put it off. The maps that I had included kind of show, we're sitting in that 25 to 50 year deficit on soil moisture reserves. We're sitting at some of our driest in terms of long-term normals for precipitation. And these are not things that are a surprise to probably anybody sitting here. We are all very well versed in how much it has or has not rained, but I thought it was a good time to bring it forward. The RMA, they have that great resource that I included for you, but it's 18 pages, so I didn't bring it with me to read. But it outlines some of the things that we need to consider when it comes to making a declaration. And, the graph that I included there, it just talks about the percentage of crop in hectares that would be rated poor. And from my bits of driving around, I think we could rate most of our prairie land in that poor category. I think even our tame pastures, we could consider most of them in the poor category. Certainly our dryland cropping producers are going to be rated very highly in that poor category. And these are not things I say lightly. I don't want people to think that I'm not being sympathetic, but I just don't think they're rated good to excellent. And then, to be honest, I'm hearing things of our irrigated crops that aren't all in perfect form either, just because things didn't germinate. Some of the flood producers had really late germination, and now they're trying to run a set of flood across, and it's not even, it's following the dikes instead of flooding the ground, and it's just a tough year. And so that's why I'm here talking about it a little bit today. I hope I put enough information in the RFT to make some sense of it and just figure out a way forward.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate what you've put together for us. I think we all understand that it's dry and drier than it usually is, thankfully, but it gets that way sometimes. What is the perspective of council with regard to this? I mean, I think you've clearly indicated that some of the past history and the fact that it is a little maybe early in the growing season yet. I mean, and no doubt with the situation that we have right now, the chance of recovery in this year is probably passing us rather quickly, even with significant moisture. We've lost quite a bit of growing season. I guess the question becomes, how do you define a disaster, basically? And I think the fact that we have estimates of, say, 1 in 25 to 50 year droughts indicate that those are things that happen from time to time. Are those disasters, or do we expect to live with those sometimes? And there's no question that it's as dry as we've seen it for a long time. And I think our options are whether we have a range of options. Any perspective from other councillors? Oh, Kelly and then Holly, please.
Yeah, I mean, with drought comes grasshoppers. We're on the west side. We are pretty much dry land for the most part. I have heard from a couple ratepayers who would like to see this happen. Having said that, like the Reeve says, a rain incident could turn this around. There is no benefit that I've read about that would help that ratepayer, those ratepayers. It would shine a light on the county. And is that a light that we want at this point? I've read where a disaster can be declared when 50 to 90% of the municipality it experiences extreme crop reduction. Are we there yet? That's where I'm struggling. Are we past the 50%? We are 50% under irrigation in our county. And so I'm just, do we wait? The last time we declared, we did wait until August. Struggling with the decision for sure.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Holly, and then Neil.
I guess you're looking at the extended forecast. Everyone's predicting quite a hot, dry summer. I know with the EID, and like if this continues, the cows may have to go home early, and there's a shortage of hay everywhere. We've gotten lots of calls, people looking for hay from Claire's home to Jenner to Cochrane to you name it, and there's just not a lot of hay. And I guess my concern of mine too, I think we might be on the waiting end as Kelly led to, but considering people's mental health as well, there's a lot of stress in these kind of situations, and as a county, how can we provide support to any ratepayers who may be in need of that piece?
Thanks, Holly. Neil?
Yeah, we kind of have half a disaster going here. The 4-H farmers, our farmers, irrigated farmers, which is most of our production, are going to have the record year. It's the writing's on the wall. The only thing we have to worry about, can you declare our prairie a disaster? Like we have a lot to be proud of in this region. Like the irrigation is saving our farmers right now. And to use the word disaster is probably not right for most of our producers. But there is no doubt that the grass is short, it's burning, it's done. When you pull the plug.
Thanks, Neil. Holly?
Just one thought to that, Neil, is because we have restricted water, there's not enough inches to grow a potato crop in the south or canola or corn. So you have to steal inches from other fields. So it's there still is loss among the irrigation as well. It won't be as clear cut because we do have less water per acre. So you have to play a bit of a sharing game.
Okay, thank you. Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, we also have strong provincial government support through crop insurance, which is going to get the irrigated farmers through the season. Yeah, I'm on the fence on this one. I don't know that it's quite ready to call a disaster yet.
Yeah, I would tend to be the same. And I think, Todd, in your report, you indicated some optimism, and we always want to be optimistic. And we know that it's a moisture deficiency that we're facing, and that's the cause of this. And when that starts to turn around, the situation starts to improve. And it could take time, but I would tend to be a little bit on the optimist side too, to say let's see how the next few weeks go, and we'll meet again in 2 weeks, I think. So, but again, look for council to share direction on that. I don't think we want to send the message that we're flippant about this by any means. We certainly know it's dry and that it's causing concern for people, for all of us as agriculture producers and people who live in the area. But I think it's also in our interest not to be alarmist ahead of time, but quite realistic. This is a dry area that it gets dry from time to time, and it's always moisture that resolves drought. So, does anyone have direction for us? I think, what are the options that are presented? I'll just go back here. Go ahead, Holly.
I would like to motion that we look at option 3 to defer the decision to a later meeting of council.
Okay, thank you. Are we comfortable with that? Everyone's, well, we'll vote on that, but that is one of the options that's presented from your recommendation as well, Todd, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's an interesting RFD to bring, because I'm looking for a decision, but I'm not really here to talk for or against the declaration. The one part about the declaration that we all know very well is just it raises that level of awareness with our provincial and federal governments of that, the struggle that we're having with the drought conditions, right? And so that's the one benefit of doing it, but that we don't have to do that today to raise that awareness. And so I think if that what you guys have kind of proposed is a pretty good way forward, I think.
Thank you for that. I think also for context in discussion with a number of provincial representatives, I think they're aware of the situation, well aware of the situation, and taking the steps that need to be taken at this point to you know, prepare for it getting worse if it does, or if it corrects itself. Go ahead, or starts to.
And if I could just add to that, it certainly doesn't stop any of us for continuing to advocate for our areas that are dry and talk about it and pray for rain.
Right, and I think it also shines, you know, certainly a year like this, we recognize the extreme value of irrigation to our area and the foresight that people in the past had to develop the infrastructure that allows our area to continue to be productive even in spite of the drought that we're in. So are we ready for the question? Option number 3, all in favor, please indicate. To defer. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Thanks for that, Todd. We'll stay tuned as time goes by here.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. We are up 10.1. Stuart, welcome. We're item number 10, administrative business, recognition night for volunteer firefighters. Stuart Lucci's our fire chief. Welcome.
Good morning, Region Council. Thank you very much for having me this morning. I guess before I really get going here, I do notice that as I look through my RFP, or request for decision this morning, our fire trucks are at home. They're not returning June 29th, 2033, as I have there. Sorry about that. One little mistake there. And then I'm going to talk to budget, and it has changed since I've put this request for decision in. So we may want to do an amendment possibly on this. So on May 6th, 2023, County Newell approved fire services to deploy up to 4 apparatus, 14 firefighters to Northern Alberta to assist with wildland fires. These units were utilized in places like Edson, Wildwood, and recently Garden Creek. Our trucks did come home last Thursday on the 29th, when Thursday on the 29th, and they are currently actually going through a check at Martin Chrysler to make sure that the trucks are all still well and good. And if I can report on that really briefly, the Patricia truck did experience some issues. We had a County of Newell firefighter inadvertently make an error, which has affected the pump and the motor. So we're working at getting that corrected right now. And then mechanically, we're just waiting to hear from Martin Chrysler if there's any issues with those 1-ton rapid response vehicles. So during the hottest months of summer, we wanted the vehicles back here. The support provided resulted in 6 different deployments of 31 volunteer firefighters taking a turn going north to assist others in need. This also meant that 21 local businesses within our area were without key workers, leaving a void for them to fill. It is appropriate and proper to thank these extraordinary individuals who went to serve our neighboring communities in need, and those business owners that had their void on their day-to-day operations while those firefighters went to assist. Fire services would be honored to hold a fire employer recognition night of these individuals. This would be a 3-hour event that will be held at the end of July at the Centennial Regional Arena parking lot. And we're looking at July 26th or 27th. We haven't quite nailed down which one of those 2 dates it would be. It would include hamburger, hot dog, barbecue, recognition, presentation, and then we're hoping to have at least one fire apparatus from each fire hall here for that event so that people can go through the fire trucks. This would be a public event where it wouldn't just be the 10 fire departments and those employers that actually allowed their firefighters to go and help. I believe that this recognition needs to be recognized and shown countywide and show the residents the work that we did, the sacrifice that those employers made, all that good stuff. When I first started putting this together, and of course I didn't know when an end date was truly going to happen for our firefighters going up north, so I've really scrambled just in the last week or two here to try and put together some costing for it. And when I first started my own estimate costing without even checking into it, I was sitting at about $18,000. And with that, the breakdown was about $7,000 in food, about $4,000 for entertainment, and about $7,000 again for the recognition and awards. And I based that price on the recognition off of the plaques that we present to different employers when they give us a great donation. So that's where that costing was. Where we're at today, and the reason I was able to get it down to $13,000, which is what my ask is today, is we were able to find some recognition awards that were extremely cheaper than the actual plaques that we give to employers, and we were able to bring that cost down from 18 to 13 by doing that. Since then, I've actually inquired about, rather than having a live band come because it was being problematic, I think in the short notice to try and get a live band there, I approached Q13 and they have agreed that they will, in minimum, send the equipment so that we can pipe music on during this event, and that will be free of charge. Their hope is that maybe Schmedley or somebody else might be there for that event just to give a little bit of talking other than just the piped radio music, but that was an alternative that saved us $4,000 there, so that brought that price down. And then I just got word from JBS this morning. They're going to donate us 6 cases of beef, and those cases are roughly, I'm told, 60 pounds a piece, so about 350 pounds of hamburger is going to come to us. And now I have to approach probably Brooks Meat Packing, or maybe even out in Dutchess or a local company to make patties for us. And so I'm not too sure what that will cost, but I'm sure that brings that. In my original thought through Walmart was the hamburgers were going to be close to $3,500 to purchase. So I think it'll bring that cost down significantly, a little bit of labor for somebody to make those patties for us. And then, of course, I have approached Walmart with a letter asking if we could have a donation for the other condiments that would be involved. Hot dog, hamburger buns, hot dogs, the ketchup, mustard, relish, plates, things like that. So I'm really hoping to hear back from that and bring that cost down. Currently, from the 13 that I asked you for, with the radio station taking $4,000 away, we're at $9,000 now. And I'm really hoping to get it closer to maybe 5, might be the final total. But my ask today would be for that 13,000, with the understanding that I'm going to work really hard to try and get those costs down as much as possible so we can hold this public event.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. Holly, go ahead.
So your plan is outside of the CRA now because I'm an eternal optimist. It could rain that day. So I'm wondering we're choosing there and not say the Silver Sage, which would be very easy to go in and out of. Why did you pick the CRA?
That could be a great option. I was really trying to collaborate with the city of Brooks. I brought Kevin and Barry in to help myself and Ashley with planning this event. So that's where kind of the CRA came in. But I can certainly approach the Silver Sage and see if we could use maybe the inside area there of the corral, and then it would be under something. if it did happen to rain or if it was inclement weather. So my hope was at the end of July, it would still be really nice outside, and away we go. We do. I want rain desperately, actually. So.
Lynette, and then Adina, and then Neil, please.
I think it's a great idea. Who's going to be cooking the burgers? Are you looking at the chefs here?
I was hoping to approach, yes, our council, and maybe, you know, even our 3 municipalities and maybe some of those councillors coming in and giving a hand, right? This was a community or a county event, so I'd like to include as much of the county as possible, and truly for the recognition portion, I am planning on approaching, you know, our dignitaries. It'd be nice to see a representation from the province coming down, whether that's Danielle Smith herself or one of her representations. But I'd also like, you know, Tom Harnos or Kevin Thompson, who's from AEMA and on the wildland fire side. It'd be nice if one of them came and just talked a little bit to the work that was done up north and stuff like that. So I'm really trying to make this a very informative event for everybody and give these deserving people as much recognition as possible for the hard work done.
Okay, Adina, please.
Are you looking to keep this just a burger hands-on kind of thing, or I'm just thinking I would be interested in preparing some baked beans for this barbecue if you're interested in purchasing forks is the thing.
Well, forks and spoons is part of my list here of stuff that we need to purchase. When it comes to local people bringing stuff, I just need to check with Alberta Health on how that works, but I wouldn't be opposed to a donation like that for sure.
Thank you. Neil?
I think it's an excellent idea, especially because it brings the whole county together. Each one of those little fire departments represents a different area out here, and yeah, have at it. I think it's super.
Thanks, Neil. Holly?
I just like to encourage that that when we can, we purchase local or local businesses. You know, when you're buying supplies, I'd like to support local businesses as much as possible, as opposed to big corporations.
Okay, that's a very good point, because one of my stuff was, if Walmart doesn't supply through donation, we could probably go to a Costco to get stuff to bring this cost down even a little bit more. But now we're going outside the county of Newell over into Cypress County. So I'm totally fine if the direction is to stay local, and we would do that with Walmart and Safeway. And
yeah, but
just
Walmart,
keep it
like, I
within
mean, Canadian Tire has a local owner. Like I'm talking about, I know Walmart is here, but can we get local owners, like our smaller businesses, somehow supported as well? That I was kind of going that way, not just within Brooks, but even looking at local owners if possible.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, just in terms of local preference for purchasing, we have a purchasing policy that has all the lines that our folks have to color inside of, and we do go for best value at the end of the day. So depending on the dollar value, there's certain hoops that folks like Stu or Mark have to jump through to make sure ratepayers are getting good value. There are some municipalities that write into their purchasing policy a requirement for local purchasing up to certain thresholds. And when we bring that purchasing policy back for review, that might be something council wants to consider.
Okay, I think that's good advice. Thanks, Matt. I have a question, Stu, with regard to the focus of this event. Because I certainly agree, I'm fully in favor of celebrating the efforts of our volunteers, but it seems to me that the focus here is on 31 volunteers who were able to basically volunteer to go outside the district for a period of time, which is great. But it's really the entirety of our fire service that I would like to see celebrated here, rather than just a focus on a few who, for various reasons, or were able to go to the province and compensated very well for the time they spent there, which I don't negate any of the effort on account of that, but it's really the entirety of our volunteer fire service that made us that even allowed us, and the contribution of employers for 125 volunteer firefighters that even facilitated us considering participating in this provincial effort. So I would like to see the focus shift from just one set of events to the entirety of our service, because we have, you know, I think it's just as phenomenal to, on the drop of a phone call, to see businesses drop their day-to-day activity to attend to a local fire or a vehicle accident or any kind of emergency that happens. And I struggle with this focus at this time. I don't have any problem with highlighting some of this, but I really think I would rather see us highlight the entirety of our service and all of the volunteer fire service, because I'm also pleased with the fact that while some people went outside of the district, a lot of things still happened here that rely on people who stayed at home at the job they had, ready to drop all of that on a moment's notice as well.
For sure, and you make a great point there, Reed Dirksen. It's funny, when I sent you the request, I did put the emphasis on employers and volunteer firefighters. And I can show you the text that I sent off to the fire chief saying that I was approaching about this. And I actually, when I sent the text to the fire chiefs, it was on 3 areas. It wasn't just the volunteers and the employers. It was actually the fire chiefs and the officers and the direction of making that hard decision to leave voids within their fire departments, and how we were going to work with that, and giving those fire chiefs the recognition that they deserve. So in turn, I think that would probably satisfy what you're asking about giving some recognition to those 10 departments on, you know, not just their volunteers leaving, but filling those voids and making it work for the time while they were gone. So
I would like to see the focus be on kind of 365 days a year and the service that we have locally. And because that's as good as it is, we're able to reach out and address outside demands as well, if we could do that. Neil?
Yeah, I totally agree with that line of thinking there. Like, we don't do this that often. It's going to be a big day. Just take in the whole area and expand on what you're talking about. They make a big deal out of it, not just the guys who left.
For sure. I can do that.
Okay, does that make sense? Anyone else? Yeah, I'll go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to the motion.
Sure.
You're ready.
I think so.
That council approves holding a recognition night for volunteer firefighters, their employers, for those. Okay, so I'm going to reword this a little bit. Okay, so that council approves holding a recognition night for all volunteer firefighters within the county of Newell and their employers. We do have to mention, as a result of the work that went into the provincial wildfire response, because to get the funding, we're going to have to, even though we're encompassing everything, we need to recognize that it is a spin-off from the wildfire response. So if you could help me with that, Ariana, I would appreciate it. But taking into account Reeve Dirksen's comments, so that all firefighters are invited. Are we excluding their families?
No, this is a public event, so
Public event.
Absolutely, we want their
Okay,
families
so
to be
that
there, be
needs to
proud
be
of their
part of the
spouses.
motion as well, because this motion is very ended that public is not invited. So we need to also include the public in there.
Okay. Yeah.
you could say special acknowledgement for those who went up north.
Okay, yeah. So Ariana will help me with that. It's all inclusive as a result of the wildfire response. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's great to be able to celebrate all of our volunteers, and in the context of that, really the ones who stayed at home provided as, you know, that's equally important work. I don't think we need to segregate out too much. I mean, I'm fine with it being, you know, this is the circumstance that has led to the event, but I think the recognition is to all of them. Go ahead.
Just to add to that, we do have information that our premier will be in the Brooks area on July 26th. So FYI.
Perfect. I'll send the notice out as soon as approval happens here, so.
Yeah, I think we should, make an effort to get representation there. That would be good. Lynette, please.
Did you need to include the dollar value onto your motion as well?
We'll include that 13,000 to a maximum of 13,000 if you're okay with that.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions, comments? All in favor of the motion, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. It being 11 o'clock, we are scheduled to have Mr. Justin Thompson from the Alberta, Southern Alberta Land Trust with us to talk about, pardon me, conservation easements. I'm going to suggest we take a couple of minutes while you set up, and then we'll reconvene in less than 5. Let's call our meeting back to order. And with that, we'll welcome Justin Thompson. If you welcome to introduce yourself better than we can. You're from Calgary, but also have interests in the Pincher Creek area with the Southern Alberta Land Trust. Yeah. Welcome to talk about conservation easements today. Great. And let's, we'll have an introduction so you know who you're talking to too. Neil, go ahead and start, please.
Yeah, I'm Neil Johnson, Councillor Division 10 around Brooks.
Good morning, Amanda Philpott, Division 8, Duchess.
Good morning, Ellen Undra, and I represent the countryside around the village of Rosemary.
Hi, good morning. My name's Greg Screever, Division 5, Lake New Resort and Castles.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Christman. I'm from the west side of the county, which takes in Countess, where you just have a big sign up, and over to the county of Wheatland border. Okay. So you would have drove through my area on the way in.
Great. Thank you. Arno Dirksen from the GEM area, Division 9. Okay, thanks, Arno.
Welcome, Matt Fensky, County Administrator.
Okay, hi, Matt.
Holly Johnson, Division 4 from the very dry south of Scandia, Rainier and Bow City.
Hi, Holly.
Welcome, Adina Scandrip, Division 2, not so dry.
Hi, I'm Lynette Kopp. I'm Division 3. My turn. Division 3, I'm the Patricia Millicent area.
Okay, thanks.
I'm Sandra Stanway with the Bulletin.
Hi. Yeah, you met. Great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you having me here today. It's a good opportunity for SALTS. This is, SALTS has been involved in private land conservation in a lot of municipalities in Alberta, but this is actually our first project in Newell. So it's a great chance for me to come here and talk to you about it. As Reeve Dirksen mentioned, I live in Calgary, but I have family that ranch in Pincher Creek. We have some land in Pincher Creek. I have some cows. And I actually got involved with SALTS because we did a conservation easement on our family land well before I started working at SALTS, so maybe 15 years ago. And so I've been the executive director at SALTS now for about a decade. And we have staff, we have 6 staff, Canmore, Jenner, Alberta, Pincher Creek, Cochrane, we're all over the place. So we kind of are virtual, but our board typically meets in High River or Chain Lakes area, because they're kind of up and down that whole eastern slopes. And we have done conservation easements in Pincher Creek, Ranchland, Willow Creek, Foothills, Rocky View, Cypress, Cardston. I think those are the main areas that we've worked so far. And so, like I said, this is Newell is new to us. So I appreciate the chance to come here and talk to you today. So with that, I will keep trucking. And I'm hoping to get through this fairly quickly because I would like to have time for questions from the council. So just some quick background. There's a number of different land trust organizations in Alberta. There's the big national organizations, Nature Conservancy, Ducks Unlimited, and there's several regional land trusts that tend to focus either just in one municipality or a group of municipalities in a certain area. So we're kind of southern Alberta, obviously. We were started by ranchers 25 years ago. We've got easements with approximately 60 different families or landowners on 42,000 acres. We'll actually hit about 51,000 acres at the end of this year with the projects we complete. Our board of directors is made up predominantly of people in the ag sector, and several of them have easements on their own property. You know, obviously grassland watershed conservation is our top priority, but SALT was also founded to essentially provide tools and support to keep ranchers on the landscape and to facilitate the conservation of not just grasslands, but the ranching economy. Amazingly, to date, we have very strong relationships with our landowners. We have yet to have somebody try and get out of one of our easements or complain about one of our easements over 25 years. And we hear from people that our easements are very compatible with standard agricultural practices on grasslands. What people don't probably know is in addition to easements, we have this obviously very long-term relationship with the landowners. We're actively working with them to try and bring more value added around riparian health, range health, invasive weed management. So we're out there partnering with Cows and Fish, the Old Man Watershed Council, the Weston Foundation to try and bring dollars to our landowners if they want to put new capital in place to improve range and riparian health. If they want to tackle invasive weeds, we try and bring dollars to the table for that. So we're actively trying to support, not just doing the easement, but then actively supporting our landowners if they want to take more steps to deal with these issues around range and riparian health and invasive weeds. So one thing that actually I just looked at these numbers or got these numbers not that long ago, and I think it's pretty interesting. So if you look at all the private land in Alberta, less than 0.5% has a conservation easement on it. And if you take out the cultivated land and look at how much private land is in a sort of grassland state or natural state, grasslands, forests, foothills, less than 1% of that private land has a conservation easement on it. So there's not a lot of this. I mean, the numbers may sound big, but it's a very small percentage of private land. And I don't have the specific numbers for Newell, but I'm sure it's far less than 1% of your private land base is under conservation easement. And what you probably do know is that our easements are almost always used to conserve riparian areas, wetlands, native grasslands, wildlife habitat. And of course, these are landscapes that every year, just through human activity and development, we have less and less of these every year. And I probably don't need to tell you about that. You know, I think often there's concerns about, well, we'll talk more about the concerns about easements, but I think conservation easements can also support municipal planning objectives. You know, a lot of our MDs have a major focus to keep land in agriculture, to keep it going from agriculture into recreational or subdivisions or, you know, extraction. And so conservation easements can help municipalities keep land in agriculture. We obviously preserve natural infrastructure. You know, these areas that help mitigate flood, help mitigate drought. We conserve water resources. That's a big part of what we're doing is protecting watersheds, which have huge value from a storage, filtration standpoint. We're obviously protecting habitat, which depending on the municipality, some municipalities, wildlife habitat is part of their economy, right? Fishing, hunting. It's also part of the folks that live there, their enjoyment of the area. And as I said before, all of these assets are being continually eroded each year. And I don't want to bore you with too much history, but so my grandmother was born in Pincher Creek in 1914. My dad was born in 1944 in Pincher Creek. And Calgary was less than 50,000 people in 1914, less than 100,000 people in 44. And I know it depends on where you are in Alberta, but in 100 years, the number of people that have spread across the landscape in Alberta and the amount of development and fragmentation is enormous. And that is only going to continue. That is a guaranteed unless there's some major disaster. We're going to just see more and more development and fragmentation. That's the reality. So that's part of the context of why I'm involved in this is I have this sense of history that some of these things that are really important for not just me, but I think Albertans generally, they're being lost. There's no question. And it's not just me. I mean, native prairie conservation, as you all know, is a priority for the Alberta government. and Albertans. We have the Alberta Prairie Conservation Forum that's made up of government, NGOs, academia, municipalities, and the whole focus is to say, how do we conserve what's left of our native prairie? And what their action plan says is in functioning native prairie and parkland landscapes are best guarantor of future biodiversity and environmental quality, and that habitat connectivity is essential to maintain biodiversity. So, jumping into the specifics of this project that we're talking about, this green map is what the Prairie Conservation Forum has sort of identified as what's left of sort of intact grasslands in Alberta. And so within that green, there's still some cultivation, there's some irrigation, but generally where these green lines are is where the grasslands are still relatively intact. And you see a lot of it's along riparian corridors, along rivers, around big lakes. This project sits kind of in a pinch point of habitat. So one, it both supports a block of habitat, grassland habitat, and it also supports connectivity in these areas that are being chopped up more and more so that there's less habitat connectivity in our grasslands. And this project directly supports that. So there's a lot of things I want to cover today, but I want to jump into the specific concerns that were raised both in the response to the agency notice that we sent you, but also in some of the comments that we saw in the newspaper article. So really I heard two main concerns, or 2.5, 3 concerns. The main one was how will Salts and the landowner deal with basically weeds. If there can't be herbicides used, and I'll get to that. And then same with the newspaper article without weed control and fire. And then lastly, it was the issue of the land no longer being available for irrigation or cultivation. So this information I'm going to show you here was in our agency notice. The restrictions were sent to the council or to the county. There is absolutely nothing in our conservation easement that prevents the management of weeds using herbicide. In fact, we support it. We support invasive weed management. And as you can see, this is the wording in our easement. Targeted spot spraying is permitted of localized invasive weed and insect infestation to a maximum of 8 acres of any one quarter section. Not only that, we don't stop the MD if you have an issue with weeds coming in and managing it. The landowner can spray more than 8 acres on any quarter, but they need permission. We don't want someone basically spraying the whole quarter section unless it's necessary, unless required by the local municipal district in accordance with the Weed Control Act of Alberta. So one, herbicide use is allowed and we encourage the management of invasive weeds. And two, there's nothing stopping the county from going in there if there's a problem and dealing with it. With respect to fire, and I didn't fully understand the specific concerns that folks were getting at with fire, but I did want to take this excerpt from a fairly long clause in our easement that just says that the landowner should not be obligated to send any notice and Salts shall not be entitled to make any claim with respect to any activity prudently undertaken by the landowner in good faith to prevent, abate, mitigate, injury, or damage to the property from accidental fire. So we have developed these conservation easement agreements over 25 years in a way to try and work with ranchers, work with the ag community, and make sure that it works for them and that it's practical from a management and risk standpoint. So maybe after I'm done, you can clarify if there's other issues around fire. But the point is that the way that weeds and fire could be managed in our conservation easements is no different from any property that doesn't have an easement on it. And I just wanted to give you a specific example. So I looked at the 3 large energy facilities on this 3,300 acre property. And they range from 1 to 2 to 1.5 acres. And I was generous, right? I put a big block around, including grasslands outside. So under our conservation easement, if you wanted to spray the whole area of all these energy facilities, the landowner wouldn't have talked to Salts. There's no permission required. They just go out and do it. It's completely permitted on our easement. In fact, if all these energy facilities were on one quarter section, 160 acres, not the 3,000 acres, they could spray all of them under the easement without permission. So I wanted to make sure it was really clear that there's nothing in the easement that restricts herbicide use. And in this particular case, no matter how you slice it, there's nothing stopping effective weed management. And we, of course, try and encourage that because we don't want to see invasive weeds in native prairie. In terms of cultivation, the restrictions on cultivation are really around breaking grasslands. I can't imagine a scenario where after these energy facilities were done, where they wanted to break up the gravel and come in and reseed it, that we wouldn't encourage that or support that. And we'd probably try and find funding to help with that. Just so it didn't become an ongoing weed issue, right? For us, it's all about mitigating risk, just like it is for you. We don't want the liability of invasive weeds. We don't want the liability of fire on these properties. So if the energy company leaves, we want to see that cleaned up and reseeded. So the other issue that was raised and was not actually raised in the agency notice, but was raised in the newspaper article, was this issue of taking lands out of irrigation and cultivation. And I think this is more probably a philosophical issue of what your priority is. What do you want to see for land use? Do you want to see it as grazing? Do you want to see it as irrigation? Do you want to see it as, you know, renewable energy, oil and gas? At the end of the day, to me, that's more of a values judgment. But I think some of you know this property. The lands in this easement are on a butte. They're up on a butte, and they're Class 6S soils. So they're not by any means good or prime lands for cultivation irrigation. They have severe limitations. And so if you look at the, you know, counterbalancing values of this land of habitat for species, a big chunk in a critical corridor or connectivity, wetlands, and really low soil classes that probably no one's going to cultivate, this is not going to be, in my mind, a priority for cultivation. So I wanted to flag that because, you know, one of the major criticisms was this was taking this land potentially out of, you know, cultivation irrigation. So I want to just talk quickly about some of the values of conservation easements, because as we said, we've worked with, you know, 60+ landowners and families. And if we have time, I'll answer any questions around the financial incentives and how they work. But conservation easements can provide a very, very valuable estate planning tool for families. They can help the parents extract some equity from the land, shelter capital gains if they do they want to do a deemed disposition to their kids and transfer the land without passing the capital gains liability onto their kids. There's really advantageous tax benefits that have allowed a lot of ranch families who either would have had to sell part of the land or not been able to retire and pass the land on to their kids that have been facilitated through conservation easements. And, you know, we had a bunch of families at our AGM, and one daughter said, I wouldn't be ranching now. I wouldn't have had the ranch from my parents if we couldn't have done the easement, because my parents couldn't have retired, and I would have been stuck with that tax liability going forward. I mean, they could have rolled it over, but, you know, so we have a lot of families that are in that case. At the end, and this is going to be this larger philosophical discussion we may or may not have time for, but at the end of the day, a conservation easement under current legislation is a private property right. Landowner can exercise the right to protect their land. And for many landowners, that is their long-term vision for their family and for their land. And it's a way for them to exercise their rights to achieve that vision. And I think one of the things that I'm perplexed by is just as an easement determines future land use, there are other land uses that once you've gone down that road, you're not going back. So you can take land that's agriculture, turn it into housing subdivisions. It's never going back to agriculture. It's changed forever. That was a land use decision. Now you've prioritized subdivisions over grassland or riparian areas, whatever it is. You can take land and take it from grassland and convert it to cropland. And that's the landowner's right to do. But that land's changed forever. It will not go back to the same habitat or watershed that it was before. So this whole idea that easements are tying up the land forever, we make all sorts of decisions to tie up the land forever. We have land in Pincher Creek that's, you know, grassland. We also have land by the Crow's Nest River. If I'd sold that land in the Crow's Nest River into 3-acre parcels and turned it into subdivisions, which I could have done, that land's changed forever. And the ND might have been happy with that or not happy with that. I can tell you the fly fishermen and the canoeists and the hunters would not have been happy with me converting my land on the river to 3-acre parcels. But that would have been my choice, right? I've chosen to protect it. I've chosen to keep it as a riparian corridor and not turn it into 3-acre parcels. And under legislation, that's my right. But my point is that it's not just easements that are a private property right decision that change land use forever. or keep it the same forever, in theory. So leading into that, I guess what I was surprised about the article was there's other decisions made by private property owners in your municipality that I don't think are publicized or commented on. And so I'm curious, when someone goes to cultivate their land, which is their right, does the ND get involved in that? Do they comment on that? Is there a public commentary about them choosing to cultivate their land? When there's an energy lease on their land and they choose to enter an agreement with an oil and gas company, does the ND comment on that? I mean, that's kind of how I see someone's choice. And I have to be honest, in 25 years, we have not had a municipality, comment on, publish the lands, and around the issues of weed management and cultivation, actually not have the right information about our easements. It's never happened to us, and it's a big concern for us, because now we feel like, okay, now we have to get out there and get information to people about the fact that you can manage weeds with herbicide. But this isn't good land for irrigation. It's class 6S soils on a butte. And so anyway, I guess we don't fully understand why the county wouldn't have maybe talked to us before putting this information in the newspaper. And also, I guess I'm curious to hear your perspective on how this, I guess I understand that you have a larger issue with easements, and this project has become part of that debate, right? But at the end of the day, it's still an individual and an organization's project. And to me, it falls into that same sort of category of respecting some of those decisions around private property rights. And you can choose to disagree, and I'll be interested to hear your comments, but I want to flag that. And I know it's not, it's a touchy subject, but I wanted to flag that. So in summary, conservation easements are voluntary. It's a choice by the landowners, and many rural families have used them for estate planning. They're conserving very limited resources. It's not willy-nilly. We compete for the dollars. We target really important stuff that has what I would say high value for a lot of Albertans. Wetlands, riparian areas, critical wildlife habitat. It's one of many choices for a landowner. They don't need to choose to an easement. They can choose to apply for subdivision, cultivate if their land is suitable. But there are also other land uses that will change the trajectory of that land use forever. And I guess to summarize, it does not impact the landowners or the county's ability to manage weeds or fire. So I'm sure you have lots of comments or questions for me. And I can talk about conservation easements broadly. I can talk about funding. I can talk about tax structures. I can talk about anything you guys want to talk about. And hopefully you have more than 4 minutes, and I apologize for talking so long.
Thanks, Justin. I think we just need to clarify some of your comments. I'm not sure. I'd ask our staff, but I'm not sure that we publicized anything about the easements, did we? I'm not sure what you're referring to there in the statement of the.
I just saw an article where the councillors had commented on the fact that we couldn't manage invasive weeds or fire with the easement, and that it was going to take land out of cultivation. Now, maybe that was simply just comments that were heard in discussion.
I guess just for clarification, this is a public forum.
Right.
Like, everything that happens here is public.
Right.
There was some questions raised, I think, but I don't think that the county has publicized anything around these, because we are quite in favor of and protecting property rights of landowners as well.
Okay.
That's one of our primary concerns.
Okay.
So I'm
I apologize.
sure.
I apologize. I misunderstood that.
Feels like an adversarial approach here that I don't think is our intention. But I don't. Okay. I really am concerned that you're raising it that way. But if you could just clarify what you're meaning there, I don't understand.
No, that's a fair I appreciate the clarification, because I guess I misinterpreted that when there were comments in the paper about these issues of easements, that it had been sort of publicized. But I understand now what you're saying, that it had been discussed in an open forum. And I guess maybe you guys can inform me here. I wonder if other agency notices in other municipalities go to planning commissions versus the full council. I don't know. Or if they always go to council as a whole. Maybe they do.
Well, the council is the municipal planning commission, so they're one and the same in
Not
this
a
county.
subset.
They're not everywhere.
Gotcha.
So those are for clarification. We do hold our meetings in public. We don't have any control over what makes it in the paper, for example. And I think that, and we do try to encourage questions, and if the fact that questions are raised, I don't think needs to be a threat to anyone, really.
No, and I appreciate that. And I apologize for my misinterpretation. I guess because the information around weed management was actually interagency notice and in the restrictions that were sent, there was a miss there. Because obviously those questions got raised and then published based on information we'd actually provided. And so that was, I guess, my misinterpretation of what had happened. So I apologize. And, you know, I guess part of it too, obviously, is coming off a lot of work and communication that I've been doing around the RMA resolution that was initiated here. And that has been, anyway, that's been a lot of work and communication as well. And so I guess when I saw the article that talked about, you know, making reference to locked up forever, tied up forever, it was tying into some of the messaging around the RMA resolution as well. So anyway, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thanks.
I apologize.
Just, yeah, Neil?
Yeah, can you just walk us through, with these, sometimes it seems like it's inevitable they're going to lose the ranch. This is a last ditch effort, and that has happened in a few instances. How much do you actually pay? Like for $1,000 acre of prairie grass, what do you pay for these?
Yeah, it varies so much. And I'll try and be as clear as I can. It's essentially based on a third-party appraisal by a certified appraiser that's actually approved by Environment Canada, because that way CRA can't come back and argue the value of the charitable receipt after the fact. And so the appraiser looks at it and says, look, if you were able to subdivide the land, cultivate the land, put houses on it, put gravel pits on it, whatever you could do, and now the easement says you've got less, you know, development rights, and development rights can be retained. Like some of our easements, people keep extra building sites in the easement, or there's a gravel pit that they use for their own purposes and they want to expand that. And so we can retain development rights in the easement, but the appraiser looks at it and says, okay, really simply, the ranch is worth $1 million if you sold it today. With the easement on it, it's now worth $600,000. Simple example. So the value, because of the easement, has dropped by $400,000. Salts can then compensate the landowner for that $400,000, but it's not typically all cash. Usually we can only secure a certain amount of cash, so we do a combination of cash and a charitable receipt. And that's where the easements work for some people, but they don't work for others. So in the case of salts, we typically only pay 20 to 30% of the easement value in cash, which is about 10 to 15% of the land value in cash. And the rest of that value comes as a charitable receipt. So for some landowners, it doesn't work. Like if they're not interested in using this as a tax estate planning tool and they can't use that charitable receipt, some are like, well, I just can't make this work for my family. So it really depends on the property, because some properties have a lot of development potential, some have none. So on one property, the value of the easement could be 50% of the land value. On another property, the value of the easement could be 20% of the land value. And so the compensation depends on the land, and it depends on, you know, how many development rights are given up. So that's not it's not getting to your point per acre. It's really, it varies so much property by property.
No, yeah, good answer. I totally get that. Most easements though would tend to be in the foothills along the stream. Beautiful ranch up there is worth a heck of a lot more than between Brooks and Medicine now.
Yeah, they are, but we're also seeing places that further east that, you know, I suspect, you know, in the shortgrass period, the mixed shortgrass and the mixed grass and dry mixed grass, there's some areas that are really, really important for certain species, right? And so we're also trying to do more work where there's areas that are really important for habitat as well. And the values might be lower, but we might try and run around and raise money to see if we can pay a little more cash and less tax in a case where that makes the difference for the landowner, if we can find those dollars. So you're right, the overall easement value would be lower, but we might try and change the equation in terms of cash versus charitable receipt, if that makes the difference.
Well, how does this follow through? That was part of the conversation we had 75 years down the road. Somebody made $400,000. The land's worth $400,000 less. To the next owner, everything comes to an end. That's where some of us had a little bit of problems. Like the next guy.
But the next guy is buying that land with easement on it. They know what they're getting into. So in theory, they should be paying less because they're not buying it with the bundle of rights that came before the easement was on it. And a lot of folks on the eastern slopes anyway are saying, hey, this might mean that the next generation or another ranch family might be able to buy the land because now that land is basically ag land. It's not development land. And so it's actually making potentially land more accessible for agriculture rather than these crazy valuations that nobody can afford. So, and I just want to finish this point because I think it's very important. The guy down the road, yeah, he doesn't have that same bundle of rights, but he doesn't have to buy that land. He's choosing to buy it with those bundle of rights with the easement on it. And in theory, he should negotiate a lower price. And that person that took the money out, they could have invested it over here and made money. So to me, that's an economic decision. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the appreciated value of the conservation easement? Like you've purchased a bundle of rights that no doubt will be worth a lot more in the future as well. I guess that just accrues to Salts in this case?
Well, it accrues to us, but it's a liability essentially. So the interesting thing about this is that we have the value of our easements on our balance sheet, but we essentially have to make sure that the development doesn't happen because that's what the landowner wanted us to do. So we now, as the value goes up, there's more and more risk down the road that someone looks at it and says, that's worth a lot of money to get rid of that easement, right? So it's actually a liability for Salts. So that's a liability we have to look after. In terms of the rest of the land, we're seeing some easements where even though the land was devalued by the easement, people are still willing to pay quite a bit of money for it 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And so the impact of the value of the land down the road will depend on a bunch of things. Does someone want to build there? Do cattle prices go up versus grain prices going down? I mean, I think we're all concerned that only grain prices are going to go up and cattle prices are never going to go up. But if that land is only in grass, and 20 years from now, beef is worth a ton, someone will say, I'll pay money for just grass.
The existing suite of rights, I understand that moves with the market, but I'm interested in what Salts does with their investment. That also no doubt increases. I would
it does, but it's an illiquid investment. We can't liquidate that investment. We're on the hook to governments and our funders, provincial, federal government, to basically protect those assets. So that it's actually a liability for us. So for example, we've done 7,000 acres west of Calgary in the Jumping Pound. And most of that's to try and keep Calgary source water intact because it's just being covered in housing developments. And people are finally saying, hey, if we cover our whole watershed and housing developments, it's not very good for Calgary's drinking water. It's going to be storm runoff. It's going to cost us a lot of money. So maybe we should protect the watershed. So we're doing these easements. My concern about out there is you're right, that land value is going to go through the roof. So we've been setting aside large sums of money with the idea that as land ownership changes, we've got to be there to defend and enforce those easements over time. And so really it's a liability, and the way we're dealing with that is by building our endowments. So Salts has, for example, we have about $8 million set aside right now, and we continue to build that. And that's our endowment to make sure we monitor and can enforce those easements over time.
Are you a charitable organization?
Oh, yeah, we're a federally registered charity.
So any money that comes to you comes with a tax or as a donation, basically?
Yes, so we can provide a charitable receipt for any donations to build those endowments or do projects. And actually, we were talking before, and one of the questions, where do we get our money? And the bulk of our funding over the last decade has been through the Land Stewardship Fund, which was created under the Land Stewardship Act. And it was set up when the government was selling off Crown land, so they were getting rid of a public asset. They said, let's take a portion of the proceeds from having sold a public asset and reinvest it in conservation. And that program has very specific government objectives around making sure it benefits the province in terms of wildlife habitat, watersheds. And so it's essentially reinvestment, a sale of Crown land that gets reinvested in conservation. That's our core funding. Then we apply for money from individuals, the feds, foundations, whoever we can find it from. Yes.
Kelly and then Neil.
So a direct competitor would be the Ducks Unlimited program.
Yes, it would be. We don't sort of call them competitors. We could try and collaborate with Ducks and Nature Conservancy. We kind of have different niches, to be honest, in what we do. Like Ducks, of course, is really focused on wetlands and land right around wetlands. But we have wetlands on some of our properties, but some of our properties have nothing to do with ducks, and Ducks Unlimited probably wouldn't do those projects, right? We might be more interested in sage grouse or, I don't know, curlew or Bragg's pipit or, some other, habitat. So we try and complement, and actually the land trusts all try and work together. We try and know where each other's working. And if we can do projects side by side to make that habitat and connectivity better, we actually try and collaborate.
Okay. Then I have a next question, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Kelly.
How do you respond to the comment governing from the grave?
Yeah, I think I hear that, of course, quite frequently. And I kind of like answering that question because it's very personal for me, because I've chosen to do easements on my property. So I'm essentially dictating what my kids will be able to do with that land. And I guess it's the same as if, like I said, I chose to subdivide that land and just go to Hawaii more or spend it on something else. Then my kids don't have that land, or they don't have that. So people make these rights or these decisions that affect generations, all kinds of things. An easement does keep that land in a certain land use. But, at the end of the day, it's a right that someone has. They bought that land. And I know for some people it doesn't sit right that someone can say what the next generation can do. And it just doesn't philosophically sit with them. But I would say if my kids came back and they said, Dad, you sold the ranch or you subdivided the ranch, my opportunity's gone now. I can't do that. And from a planning standpoint, I understand that municipalities are under a lot of pressure, right? You have the government downloading planning on you, municipal regional planning on you. You've got industry, you've got regulators. And so easements are one more thing that you're saying, look, this limits what we can do. And I'm not disagreeing with that. At the same time, what I'm trying to get across here is that we're really trying to conserve things that ultimately we hope are going to be of benefit to the municipality and the community long term. And that there's another set of benefits that are coming from these lands that aren't just converting them to some kind of a landscape that we've developed, because we are losing them. So ruling from the grave, I guess, I've done it. I'm comfortable with it. I've never regretted it. But some landowners aren't, and they can choose not to. And so for someone else to say, you shouldn't be ruling from the grave, except in the planning context, which I understand, there's concerns that 50 years from now, that would be a better use. And we did present to RMA, and, Paul McLaughlin, it's Paul, right? He raised this issue that, you've got to deal with all these different pressures for planning, and that the world's going to change over time. And I agree, the world's going to change. And I don't think, I think he was worried about, could we trade land easements over here for stuff over here? I think over 50, 75, 100 years, there will be mechanisms to say this easement's no longer viable, and there's land over here that's better for habitat or watersheds. Let's look at how we manage that. The other thing he was talking about was, well, what if, things change with climate change, or things get hotter, or there's a drought? And my comment is, one of the beauties of easements is they're actually helping protect that natural infrastructure. So you can say, don't do an easement here because it might change, but then you didn't do an easement on that wetland in the riparian area and it got developed, and now you've lost that valuable future asset. So I don't know, I'm kind of all over the map here, but yes.
Neil, and then Holly, please.
Yeah, just one question. Does the trust actually own any acres of their own?
No, we don't. So this is another really good question. So we hold that interest in land. Landowner can still sell it, transfer it, do what they want with it. We just have the interest in the conservation values. SALTS does not hold any fee simple land. And that was a conscious decision by SALTS, because our board is made up of people in the ag sector, and they didn't want our organization out there competing for land or owning land. The idea was that we were not going to go and buy land, fee simple. Other organizations do. Sometimes the landowner says, I want to sell my land and I want to sell it to a conservation organization. But at this point, SALTS has only done easements. And the other beauty of that is the management stays in the hands of the landowner, right? And I think some land trusts have run into difficulty where they own land, they try and rent it. This neighbor's mad. Why did you rent it to them? I'm looking across the fence. I don't like the way he's grazing. NCC should rent it to me or whatever. Like this, it's just owning land can be difficult for a lot of reasons, right? For an organization.
Thanks. Holly?
I was going to explain the comment about the fire.
Thank you.
In talking to, and I can't say which county it is, but some counties have a lot of land in easements already. And they've seen situations where there is fire risk on that land because of down trees and such. And the Conservation Authority has said, or that is said, nope, you can't cut down, you can't remove those trees because that's all natural habitat, you can't touch it. The same thing with invasive weeds, the same problem. They can see them across the fence and they're going, nope, it's natural, you can't touch it. And I don't know which one that is, but we have a concern about that, right? I mean, obviously that piece of land, it's bald prairie, there's not a lot of trees. But down the road, if we do have a changing climate, there could be, right? So if we're having to look out forever,
100 years, yeah.
because you're saying it's forever, well then things change. So how do we make sure if we, you know, that we've covered those kinds of things? It's a huge issue.
It is. So let me, I would like to get the specifics on that because I think I'd like to know which organization that was and which property, because I do hear things sometimes that are true about other land trusts. I also hear things that I'm like, I'm not sure that's exactly what's happened on the property. I would say there's some organizations that are more pragmatic than other probably. The one thing about the conservation easement is it does have a clause in it that there can be changes to the management practices. And I would hope that over time, common sense would prevail. And the example you're giving me does not sound like common sense. But I've seen, and I don't want to say who it might be or might not be, but I've seen some organizations where they have changed over time. They've become more practical. And a lot of these stories were from some of the earlier days when easements, where there was organizations that were kind of, you know, stuck in a certain way, maybe weren't from a rural area, didn't understand some of the rural challenges. And I've seen a lot of change. One really good example is the new Alberta head of Nature Conservancy's Tom Lynch-Taunton. Comes from a ranching background. His family owns Antelope Butte Ranch. He's now the Alberta Regional Vice President of Nature Conservancy. He presented at the RMA with me. And so now NCC, for example, who didn't have that before, has someone at their head in Alberta who is from a ranching background and more pragmatic. So I think those are valid concerns. I would hope because of the governance of salts, it would be less of a concern.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other questions? Holly, one more.
You have 6 staff.
Yeah.
What are 6 staff doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So any given year, we are doing anywhere from 4 to 7 new conservation easements. So that's everything from baselines, range assessments, negotiations, grant funding, grant reporting. And we have anywhere from $2 to $8 million flowing through our organization in terms of the dollars going out to the landowners on these properties, various properties. So one chunk is securing funds, doing the actual projects. We have staff that go and meet landowners every year. So we either call them on the phone or we actually go to the property. We have one staff person right now who's spending most of their time getting money for fencing, off-stream waters, invasive weed management, so doing stewardship. They're actually out there. We get grants to get dollars to help our landowners, so we have a staff person doing that. And then because we do so much reporting, and I've got a board and governance and financial management, and we have an $8 million endowment to invest and manage, I have staff that help with admin, payroll, all those things. So we actually, SALTS with 6 staff, we do a lot for the 6 staff in terms of what we're actually doing every year. If you looked at us compared to bigger organizations, I think you probably look at it and say, holy smokes, they're actually getting a lot done with 6 staff and a small payroll. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and just sorry, I was looking it up. It was Foothills County that concern came from.
Okay.
So I I talked to a bunch of councillors, and I'm not sure which particular one it was. I think I know which one, but it was Foothills County who raised that concern about the fire and the invasive weeds.
Was that recent?
Yeah, it was, when was our Foothills meeting in May? April, March, January? Okay, well, time flies.
Well, you know what I'll do? I'm curious. I'll talk to the folks at the county, not just to say, you know, I was curious because so there's a land trust called Foothills Land Trust that just works in Foothills, and they actually have some members of the council on their board. And then I know NCC does projects in Foothills. We do projects in Foothills. So okay, good. Thank you. Yeah.
I invite you to stay for lunch. Thanks for your presentation. I guess I'd make a couple more comments. I think the fact that people are asking questions, or even that that RMA has a resolution on this, shouldn't be viewed as necessarily a threat to the situation. I mean, we kind of live in a day where if you ask questions, you're liable to be sidelined in some way or other. I think that we should view those from a open perspective, because I think I've also heard comments about the potential to strengthen this instrument. The fact that there's people asking questions doesn't necessarily mean that anyone is opposed to conservation. I think we're pro-conservation, but I think that maybe we need to look for some opportunities to increase the value. Like, for example, a surface lease that some of your land would encompass significant surface leases, but the value of those are reviewed every 5 years.
Right.
Doesn't take the surface lease away, but the value, is something that continues then to stay with the landowner, which I think those are some concerns I've heard as well. So, and the fact that there's probably competing interests that fund some of these things, and that's also not a threat. But I think going forward, let's continue with open dialogue on this, and not, these are public meetings, and I think it needs to be understood that what happens, what's said here is available to the public.
You make a very good point. I didn't mean to be adversarial. I think what's challenging too for nonprofits like ours is that we do have limited resources, and so I just need to find a way to dedicate more time to going around and meeting with people. The problem is none of our grants or none of our funding covers me walking around meeting with people. So then I have to find a big chunk of my time to do a lot more, which is important. And that's actually essentially what's come out of all these discussions, is I just need to find a way to spend more time out there talking to people. On your point about surface leases, this is something we didn't talk about. I mean, conservation easements in Alberta cannot stop subsurface mineral rights access. And our landowners, a lot of them actually choose to do an easement with us because they want to minimize the impact or discourage surface development from oil and gas. Some of them don't. And so the easement can change a bit depending on whether the landowner is more interested in that or not. But again, to me, that's a landowner decision. If they're saying, and the easement can reflect that, if they're saying, look, I don't want any more oil and gas wells on my property, I want this easement to help discourage that, or have salts there to really push for best practices. Or if their landowner says, look, I want more energy development on my property, we'd say, that's good. That's your priority. We probably won't do an easement with you, because we're not going to be there sort of working to encourage more fragmentation and roads on the property. So it doesn't stop that. Just to your point about people wanting surface lease revenue.
Yeah, and I wasn't even referring to wanting surface lease revenue, but the value of that infringement changes over time. Whereas, and maybe that's something to consider with a conservation easement, that the value of that can be revisited with the landowner, because that's certain. I expect that's that will increase in value as time goes by, and I think that's in the interest of conservation, which is credible.
It is, and I know I'm using a lot of your time here, but we're really working hard to try and develop new forms of revenue to actually stack on top of the easement. So we're looking for ways where someone does a conservation easement, and then maybe we can pay them to support this habitat for this critter. Maybe we can pay them to support this watershed value for water downstream or flood or drought mitigation. So we're trying to find ways to add more and ongoing annual payments. We're looking at carbon, we're looking at water, we're looking at habitat. So I agree with you on that. We've got to find ways to do that. At this point, this is the tool we have at our disposal. But I think you're right, we need to find others.
Thank you for your presentation, Justin. And if you've got time to, lunch might not be here till noon for 5 or 10 minutes. You're welcome to join us for lunch.
Yeah, I appreciate that offer. And again, thank you for taking the time and thank you for all your questions. And I've been to some MD councils in the past where I present and there's no questions. And then I just leave and I'm like, okay, I don't know, I have any idea what they think or what they're thinking. Good. Anyway, thanks very much.
Thanks. Where to from here? We are up to 10.2 Alberta Municipalities Convention, September 27 to 29. Ariana, please.
All right, as promised last meeting, this is the RFD with the details on the Alberta Municipalities Convention. Just trying to find my RFD. September 27th to 29th. So I have booked 4 hotel rooms. I put all the results of the draw for 2022 to 2024. I believe Dan Short cannot make it to Edmonton this fall, so we need to have one of the 2024 people go there. If you all want to go, we would have to draw a name just to replace him. I don't know what else to say about this.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Okay, do we have a decision to make here?
Do we need to nominate Greg to take Dan's spot or can you just take it? So I'll nominate Greg to take Dan's spot if necessary.
Okay, all in favor of that motion, please indicate. Okay, that's carried. Thanks. I think one of the things we've discussed is maybe being a little more intentional than just, I think we're following the pattern of previous councils with regard to a draw to go to these. I think that we may want to revisit and we don't have to do that today, but our approach to Alberta Municipalities Association in the future, but we don't have to do that today. We can do that at another point, at another time. So that's carried. Yeah, we're done. Okay. Thank you, Ariana. It's 5 to 12. Should we break for lunch? I'm going to suggest we break for lunch. I see that there's traffic back there that would indicate lunch has arrived. So we'll break for lunch and accommodate. Appreciate Justin joining us. Thanks. Let's reconvene. Pardon me. Okay. Yeah, I think the lights are on. I think we're live. Catherine, is that right? We'll move to item number 10.3, requests for functions of council.
I guess if Danielle Smith is meeting with us on July 26th, we have to make that a function of council? No way, because nobody's going to be there?
Yeah.
What would it be?
Yeah. A motion to that effect. I guess we need it. Do we need a motion?
I so make that motion if we need it.
Yeah, okay. All in favor? That's carried.
Greg had no idea.
It's that the meeting with the Premier is a function of council on July 26th at noon.
July 26th, if we meet with Danielle Smith, it's now a function of council.
Neil? So, yeah, it was, are you voting? No, yeah, it's all in favor. It's carried. Okay. Neil, you've got a question, do you, or a function of council?
No, I don't have no question.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't know you started the meeting. So
oh, yeah. Yeah. There we go. Any other functions of council? Oh, Matt, you wanted to talk about July 20th with the CDC South, right?
Yeah, so just keep a pin in the afternoon for July 20th after our council meeting. We're going to try and keep the agenda short for the 20th. There's a field day scheduled at the CDC South that day. We're not going to be able to make it for the actual field day, but Mangela has offered a mini field day for us. So I'm going to include you guys in the invite because I figure if Arno and I have been invited by extension, if there's more bodies, the merrier kind of a thing. See what they've got going on at the CDC between poppy trials, a rice variety. There's a few cool things that they're doing there. So the time will be determined once I see where the agenda is going to shake out. So I'll know that on the 14th. So stand by for a actual time on the 14th.
You may want to skip that traffic bylaw on the 20th if you want it to be short. But Arno, Chief, I will not be here on the 20th. I'm on holidays.
Okay. We'll deal with that at the time to them. Okay. Oh, there is a, Ellen and I are attending an event at Spruce Meadows on tomorrow. That is right, tomorrow afternoon. By invitation of ADCO. Every year I think every year, I got an invitation last year to a show jumping competition where they invite various municipal leaders. And Matt, did anybody else get invitations? I think it must come to the CAO and the Reeve, I guess. And I phoned up and said, well, is it got room for one more? And they did. And so Ellen and Harold are coming as well. So I don't know if that's a function of council. I guess it doesn't need to be unless we want it to be, but it's, there will be various, I don't know who will attend. I think they invite municipal leaders and MLAs from Southern Alberta primarily. Neil.
As always, I think anytime you're representing the county or at a spot where you wouldn't be if you weren't on the county, you're performing a function of your county duties. So I would make the motion that that is a function of council.
Okay, if all in favor, please indicate. Opposed? Okay, that's carried. Okay, any other functions of council?
Is there any events coming up? I mean, I haven't really seen anything. Is there anything that we should be paying attention to? Kind of in summer, you kind of get into summer mode. So I'm just don't want to miss things if there's something around.
Kelly, please.
Other than we were invited to the Ready grand opening, I don't, I mean, we're invited to a lot of things, but I'm just pointing out that we were invited, whether or not we choose to go.
Ready.
And Ready, R-E-D-I, they're moving. Oh, is it today? Okay, all right, so that's gone by then. Fair enough.
Yeah, the Ready was for July 24th, grand opening beginning at 10 a.m. Please RSVP by July 1st. I mean, I'm sure they're not going to be too upset if you RSVP later.
I have an invitation to Brooks Regional Communities in Bloom International Judges Dinner on July 19th at 6:30 or 5:30. I think this should be a function of council. Kelly can go, I can't go, but I would, can somebody make a motion on that? Holly?
I make a motion that be a function of council.
Okay, all in favor, please indicate. That's carried, thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, let's move on to item number 11. Our Director of Municipal Services, Mr. Mark Harvard. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Okay, this month's report, I'll just jump to remind council that seasonal shift schedule with officers working 10-hour shifts during daylight hours only, campgrounds and working on EID, invasive aquatic species and whatnot with watercraft inspections are some of the primary things that they have going on, as well as dealing with our partners and fulfilling those hours. That is a little bit of a challenge with things since we're down a patrol unit. We've got word back that the order banks for new fleet units are likely closed until about the November period. So that'll be about the earliest time that we can get tenders released to get a replacement vehicle in, because they are special service vehicles. An exemption is being applied for with the Solicitor General's office. We will be running one of the regular half tons. When an officer is running that, they cannot do provincial enforcement, so Traffic Safety Act, things like that. But they can do bylaw activities for our partners as contracted. So we're working through that process, as we're familiar with from a couple of years back with the loss of a previous patrol unit. The officer also participated in a bike rodeo for the school age children in Bazzano on June 27th. That was just as school was getting out, more or less. And that was with the RCMP and the Safe Communities Coordinator. Fleet services, we got, I believe, all 4 of the new graders, the remaining 4 out of the 6 in service now. So Rosemary, Patricia, Gem, and Rolling Hills are now active, and resales are occurring. From the note in here, the first 2 graders sold for $92,000 each, and we'll wait for the August sale to see what the remaining 4 bring us. The Fleet and Inventory Assistant completed the Fleet Management Certificate. I think that's a great group through the IPWEA for training and whatnot. There's an opportunity there to apply and develop skills regarding critical principles required for managing fleet, machinery, and equipment. So that was great to see somebody complete that one for us, and that also falls into our succession planning internally. So grader operators, we're getting a few of those complaints. It's been dry, it's washboard, but don't forget they were tied up in the dust abatement program for the last 14 days. So they're pulled out of regular road grading, be it prep work or participating in getting the calcium chloride on the ground. So they are now just getting back into their regular routine of road maintenance. Truck drivers, we still have soft spots in our roads. Yes, it is that dry, but yes, we still have frost boils and soft spots in our roads. They're getting resurfaced with a larger aggregate to get that stabilized. Then they'll get resurfaced as necessary with smaller aggregates. And they're continuing work with the road graveling program, working through that until September, early October. Dust abatement program, it wrapped up last Friday. We've got our road construction work on Range Road 14-3 that those people that applied for it, they'll be coming this week or early next week with dust abatement. And then we have one subdivision off of Highway 873 that they can't get the large tanker truck in there with the spray bars to get it turned around. So we apply it with our own tandem axle trucks. So that'll happen at the same time. So with that, 119.2 kilometers of dust abatement applied, 315 total applications with that. And I understand we've got a couple of late ones to those numbers as well. So we could be up around 320 applicants for the season. Range Road 14-3, I was out there on Tuesday, and those drainage improvements look to be coming to a head here as of the end of June. They're still kind of working on that. Our crews are doing the graveling of the road, and they're just working on the side slopes with topsoil placement and stuff. So rural water, contract 1 should be wrapping up here. Everybody's in a panic because they know they got a curb stop to their yard and whatnot until they receive the letter in the mail saying they can come in and get their flow emitter. We cannot release it. We have the contractors that have requirements under the contract to get the system flushed, to get the water quality there before we can allow anybody to hook up. So please be mindful of that if any ratepayers are talking to you in those areas that we've been servicing. On top of that, contract 2 is awarded, and the kickoff meeting for that is here in mid-July. And easement signing in contract 3 is about 65% signed. So they're working hard at getting all of that going. Steveville gravel crush went extremely well. They crushed out that initial 80,000 cubes by June 30th. Jeff took liberty in speaking to the neighbors and whatnot, and they all agreed to continue crushing until we've got everything in that pit crushed out. So we're hoping it's only going to take a couple more weeks here into July, but that will be the last crush that happens in the Steveville gravel pit. RFP for the rural road study has been awarded to Tetra Tech, and kickoff meetings being planned immediately. Silver Sage overlay was advertised at the end of June, so when we get that back, we'll know what contractor and what price we're looking at for that. There's also been some collaboration with the City of Brooks because the intersection up here at the CRA is shared amongst both agencies. So they've come to the table for their parts in that as well to see the intersection done at the same time. EID partnership on drainage, still working on land acquisitions on Rosemary Phase 3. Phase 2 is completely acquired, so waiting for more land to be acquired so that EID can mobilize up in the area once. Kinbrook Connection Pathway, small update on this. The contract is delayed due to other projects, even though the weather has been great. Things haven't been going the best for them, apparently. And so instead of late July start, it's looking like the middle of August now. And that was the update provided just the other day. And I'll just remind council, it's not in this report, but 2023 field day is being planned for September 14th. That is the Thursday between your two council meetings in September. We will get invitations out on that, and we will be touring the southwest quadrant, so south of Highway 1 and west of 36 this year. And I'm sure we'll get an excellent tour put together for you again, and hopefully transportation works out for us this year. On top of that, just the statistics report for the municipal loads. You know, I think the thing that I want to draw your attention to is we're 13%, or estimated to be 13% less this year than last year. That's just showing that things aren't happening the way that it used to be. And if you look back to the 2018 period, we're down about 30% overall on that from where we were. So I don't know if that's federal, provincial, or what's going on, but we don't have the activity that we once have. And I know when I look at the 10-year statistical report on it, we're really reduced as to where we have been with activity in the area. So what's that? Yeah, well, it's the movement of overdimensional, overweight, overloads. That's moving excavators, moving mud tanks, moving light plants, rigs, service rigs, things like that. So it can just be limited to construction equipment as well. So definitely not as busy as we once were.
Thanks. Lynette, please.
Does this, like the big blades for the windmills and stuff like that, would this show up on there too?
For us, if they were traveling our roads, yes. If they are only on provincial roads, that is not part of the statistics you'll see here.
Any other questions? Thanks for that, Mark. Holly, please.
Is my memory serve me correct that you got about twice as much as you budgeted for those graders at the auction? Did you have 46,000 or something on a previous one?
Yeah, top of my head, yes. It's a conservative estimate as to what a resale is going to be, because my crystal ball 10 years from now, I really don't know where markets are at and what's in demand. I know that we've done better in the past based on which sale you actually get to, but a lot of it is dictated by how much work is available, A, from the province, B, from private developments. So if there's a lot of work, people are looking for a lot of equipment. When there's not work, the iron's either sitting in their yard or they're trying to offload it, so they're not having those carrying costs.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Holly.
And with the dust abatement, I would expect that it got put down without any rain anywhere. I'm thinking, given how dry it's been. So would that mean there should be less complaints from people not their dust abatement not lasting as long? Just wondering.
This is one of those concise but complex answers, I guess. Moisture helps a lot. Helps a lot, yes. If in dry conditions, even if you don't have humidity in the air, it will go dormant. You need some moisture to keep it reactivated. So process this year, as per every year, we open up the road, we sprayed, what was it, 1.25 liters, I believe, on the bottom shot. Because it was so dry, we applied water to most every location that I know of. You roll and mix that granular material, you hit it with a top shot after shaping it, so another 1.25 liters, and then you pack it. And we've been fielding some questions about whether things look like they're complete or not, due to how much loose material there is on the surface, because comparison between locations, one will look like it's pretty much pavement, and the other one has a lot of loose aggregate. The whole reason behind that is sometimes when we redress an area with new aggregate to keep the fines and the aggregate there to bind it together, there aren't enough fines in the surface to give it that pavement look or feel. And there's larger aggregate that just sits on top. As long as the aggregate's coated, the dust is controlled. If you drive down the road and you see the white plume behind your vehicle and you hit that dust abatement, I'll guarantee you that it stops just like that. But whatever dust carries across it, that's always going to happen. Some people aren't of that understanding, and that's how it works. But everything that I've seen has been coated extremely well, and conditions being dry, things should have been packed in really nice, but it's still not ideal conditions. It was great for getting the work done because we didn't have any rain delays, but the quality is still questionable as we proceed through the year.
Thank you, Lynette, and then Adina.
Are the new graders, everything working good with them? Because I know they got some handy dandy little new features to them. Are they all good?
Operators have received the training. The only hiccup that I've heard of so far is one of the machines' air conditioners didn't work after they got it out in the field, and that was for the mechanic, not our mechanic, but the manufacturer's mechanic to come out and repair, and that got dealt with in a couple of days. So.
Thank you.
I was just going to say my dust abatement looks great, so no complaints.
Okay, any other questions? Then a motion to receive or approve the report from Mark, Amanda, please. All in favor, please indicate. Thanks, Mark. Post-agenda items, there are none that I know of, right? Information items are presented there. Any questions or comments about any of those? If not, a motion to go in camera. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Amanda.
Yep. Dog poppy housing fee, what's that?
Oh, thanks. That's a good knee-jerk. Is it paid to BAPS?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Unless the name of the dog.
No, because sometimes they put in the dog's name.
Yeah.
It might be Poppy, because sometimes they put the name down. You're like, whose pet is this? But
It's our annual contract with BAPS to hold dogs that are picked up by our animal control officer, I believe.
And then the next one is Bassano Airport Concept, $3,853.25, and then there's another one for the same thing, $2,687.35. What is that?
The Bassano one, I believe Jeff and Maria have been working with our partners there at Bassano. We do cost share the airport 50-50 with the town of Bassano. So anything related to the work on, I believe that's now direct control district there. And they're looking at, I believe, changing some of the lot sizes on the west end and trying to attract some more development there.
Okay, thank you.
Holly?
Under City of Brooks, we have the Alberta Wildfire wages. I'm just getting some clarification on that. So the wages were paid through the county and then we get reimbursed for sure, or because we're still waiting on that. Can you clarify?
Yeah, so that would be the share of wages that were earned by City of Brooks firefighters. Counties billing the province, we get that, we pay it to the city.
Is the funding, like, do we know exactly what the province is going to pay us for that? Is it set, or are we still not sure?
No, the rates are set. The province does have a wildland firefighting guide that sets out the rates per hour for staff and then the rates for each different type of fire apparatus. So those are known amounts, and Stuart will be sending the province the invoice if it hasn't been kicked out already by our finance folks.
Okay, thanks. Kelly, please.
And then in that same check, we are paying our share of 55 summer games. I thought that was coming out of joint services. It's not, obviously. That's where the motion was made, was it not?
No motion was made in council back in 2022. The motion number you'll see referred to there.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Seeing none, a motion to go on camera would be in order. Ellen, all in favor that we move to camera, in camera? That's carried. Thank you.